Hey kids, thanks for joining me for another ACT tutorial. Today, we are looking at punctuation again. Since I'm putting a video together, let me throw in some clips of my last ghost hunting adventure.
Okay,
Arrived on premises.
Okay, well, this is the house. Mandy and Randy's house. We just got through something.
Randy and Mandy.
I smack you.
It's one of the two.
Shut up.
Okay, here we are with my team. First, we have to prepare the house by placing cameras everywhere. We need to do this to catch sightings of ghosts. Let's check out some ACT and then come back for the scary video of some of these spooky spirits. Remember, earlier in the year I said it was very important, especially when you're taking a look at grammar and punctuation rules, that you know what an independent clause is and what a dependent clause is. And if you know the difference between those two, it makes things a lot easier, especially when we're talking about the use of semicolons and colons. This is something that gives students a lot of problems, when to use it and when not. So let's take a look at some of these examples. Here we go. You're going to use a semicolon to connect independent clauses when the independent clauses are not connected by a conjunction. All right, so this first sentence here is a common mistake. The students entered the room, comma, the ACT booklets were handed out. All right, so you've got the students entered the room. Is that an independent clause? Yes. You can say it by itself. It stands fine as a sentence by itself. How about this one? The ACT booklets were handed out. Again, independent clause, can easily stand by itself. Now, when you have this situation, you want to connect two independent clauses with a semicolon. All right, and some of these rules that we're going over now, even though they're very useful for the ACT, it's great to know this stuff with your own writing so you have a lot of sentence variety. And when you're writing an essay and you want to add some variety in your sentence structures, then these are some things to look at. Let's take another look here. The bird soared, the fish swam. I think this one is pretty obvious. The two independent clauses, right? And now let's connect them with a semicolon. All right, let's take a look at some examples here. These are situations where you do not want to use a semicolon. Henry finished studying for the ACT. All right, they put a semicolon there, and then, but he still had to take the test. Okay. Henry finished studying for the ACT. That is an independent clause. Take a look. But he still had to take the test. Now, granted, he still had to take the test, okay, is an independent clause, but we have a conjunction. And when we have a conjunction and we're trying to connect these two together, you always use a comma with the conjunction. I believe that's a rule we went over earlier. Let's take a look at another example. Before he went home, Henry returned the AMSCO ACT book to the library. before we went home. Can that stand by itself? Of course not. It's not an independent clause, it's dependent. And Henry returned the AMSCO ACT book to the library. That is an independent clause. And when you have a dependent and an independent clause, especially when that dependent clause is an introductory clause, you want to make sure you only use a comma. Let's talk about the use of a colon. Here is a very common mistake. All right, people are used to putting commas when you are listing things, but pay attention to this. Bring these items to the ACT. That is an independent clause. And then we have an admission ticket, pencils, erasers, and a watch. A common mistake would be to look at that sentence and say it's fine. But remember what I said. Bring these items to the ACT is an independent clause. If you have a list after an independent clause, you need to use a colon. Now let's take a look at this one. There is only one necessary personal trait, comma, perseverance. That is incorrect. Take a look. Perseverance. Okay, well, it's not a list, but what it does is it provides a good illustration or example of what that one necessary personal trait is. So, if that's the case, then what you need to do is use a colon. Here's some examples where you do not use a colon. You should bring an admission ticket, pencils, erasers, and a watch to the ACT. This first example, right there, you should bring, that cannot stand by itself. And after this, we have a list. So if that's the case, you don't want to use that colon. You just want to use commas as you're used to. And here, the example, that illustration of perseverance, if you take a look, one necessary trait, this is not an independent clause. So you do not want to use a semicolon.
Here are some frightening clips of the ghosts we saw that night.
Let's see how these questions are asked on the ACT. Today I'm going to the beach. School starts again tomorrow. All right, so here we go. Today I'm going to the beach. That sounds like, to me, an independent clause. And school starts again tomorrow. That sounds like another independent clause, and we know we cannot connect that with a comma. We can connect it, though, with a semicolon, and the answer would be C. At the beach, I can do many different things: swim, play volleyball, jet ski, or just relax. All right, here we have a list. Let's double check and make sure we know whether this is an independent clause or a dependent clause. At the beach, I can do many different things. That is an independent clause. And then we have our list. So that one is correct as is, so it would be F. All right, let's have some fun. Why don't we do some corrections to some sentences? Why don't we do 1 through 6 here and correct any semicolon or colon errors? Okay, let's see how you did. Sentence number 1, put these things in your trunk: a jacket, a spare tire, a flare, and a blanket. All right, we have put these things in your trunk. That is an independent clause. And then we have our list. So we need a colon, not a semicolon. In your glove compartment, put your registration and your insurance information. All right, in your glove compartment, that is a dependent clause, and we're not going to put a list of things after a dependent clause with a colon. There's only one thing on my shopping list: milk. All right, so we have this milk hanging out here, and when we take a look at it, it's kind of illustrating, right, or giving an example of what's on the shopping list. And there's only one thing on my shopping list. That is an independent clause as well. So we should be connecting those two things with a colon, not a semicolon. We went to the store and the parking lot was filled with cars. All right, we went to the store. It's an independent clause. And the parking lot was filled with cars. Well, right there, we have two independent clauses, and then we have this conjunction here. And we cannot have that connected with a semicolon. We need a comma before the conjunction. Number 5, we fought our way through the crowds. The store was even more crowded than the parking lot. All right. We fought our way through the crowds. Okay, right there we have an independent clause. The store was even more crowded than the parking lot. All right, we have two independent clauses, and they're joining them with a comma that is incorrect. We should be using a semicolon to connect those. Although tomorrow is Sunday, we have to be at school for a test. Although that is a dependent clause. We have to be at school for a test is an independent clause. We don't connect dependent with independent and use a semicolon. We need a comma there. Now let's do some examples from the ACT. How'd you do? Great. That's just great. All right. Let's take a look at some examples from the ACT. Winnie the Pooh is my favorite children's book. I like the personalities of the animals. All right, so Winnie the Pooh is my favorite children's book, independent clause. I like the personalities of the animals, independent clause, and it's being connected with a comma. We do not want that, all right? All right, so for number one, we want to connect those two independent clauses, so the answer is going to be C, because we want to connect those two with a semicolon. Let's look at number two. The book is full of great characters. Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, and Eeyore. Now, the problem is, the book is full of great characters. That is an independent clause. Now, even for me, it's kind of hard to see, but that right there is a semicolon. And if we have a list of things, we know that we need a colon because we have an independent clause with a list. And there it is. Number three, Eeyore is my favorite. He's so gloomy and depressed. There's no change that is needed for that one. Of course, you know, we have two independent clauses. Eeyore is my favorite. He's so gloomy and depressed. We connect them with the semicolon. Number four. However, I also like the philosophy of Pooh and the energy of Tigger. The answer to this one is H. All right. We have two. We don't need any punctuation between two elements of a compound object. Number 5 is A. No change is necessary.
Turn away now. This might be too scary.